So if someone has been working for 30 years in the pharmaceutical industry, what has happened in the industry during that time? That's going to be our subject for today.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Black. Welcome to our podcast, Excipient Talk, brought to you by galenIQ. And today I'm talking to Samir. Hello, Samir. How are you?
Hello, Michael. Thank you. Nice to see you again after VitaFoods last week.
Yeah, nice to see you. So, Samir, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, so my name is Samir Nasser Eddin. I'm a technical sales manager at Harke Pharma. I've been working at Harke since 2019. Before that, I worked also in Germany in 2014 in a generic company called Neurax Farm as a team leader development. And before that, I was working in Spain also in a generic company called Medinza, which was owned at the beginning by Grunenthal and then by Aristo Group. When I was working in Spain, it was I would say the period where I mostly learned of excipients because I was day to day trying to solve problems, tablets, capsules, sticking, polymers, coating. So I'm very happy that I had this way. So I started like with a very hard phase of hands-on the excipients and APIs. And then as times went on, the people said, you left the white lab coat and now you're more like talking and meetings. And I said, okay, but I earned it. So I learned a lot, and I'm happy that now I can speak. And today it's a subject I like a lot, excipients, Michael. I love excipients, I should say.
Okay, great. And what are you doing actually at the moment, Samir? What's your current occupation?
So as a technical sales manager, so at Harke Pharma and Nutra, at Harke Pharma especially, we are 4 people divided into several countries. So my countries are more like South Germany, Spain, Portugal, Austria, Netherlands, Slovenia. And I visit companies in these countries. I try to support as much as I can with the excipients or ingredients that we distribute. So Harke Pharma is a distributor company, and we work closely with you, with Beneo, with Suzuka. We are very happy with isomalt. It's a very multifunctional excipient, and I will tell you maybe a funny story how I started to how I got to know of isomalt.
Yeah. So yeah, you've mentioned it already. Isomalt, galenIQ. When did you first see and hear about it, and what made you think this excipient is different?
Well, it was probably 20, 25 years ago when the current commercial managing director, Bodo Fritzsching, he visited Medinza at the time. And of course, I had heard of isomalt. I had not worked with it yet, but of course he came, he showed me galenIQ, and he showed me how multifunctional it is, because of course we know that it has different particle sizes. It has like there is one type that is more soluble than the other, and the many uses that it can be used, not only in the good taste it has, the many it can be used, for example, in coating, but as a filler, in ODTs, in lozenges. So it has a multi-usage, and it has a good flowability, which is very important, I think, especially for direct compression. And it is non-hygroscopic, so this is also a big advantage. And I was a bit amazed, like, wow, that's a lot of things for one excipient. And I remember having a sample. I was always waiting for the opportunity to use it. So yes, that was like more than 20 years ago, I would say.
Okay, thank you. So in that period, moving on now to excipient regulations,
Hmm.
why did the industry move away from identify and purity and into more functionality, performance, expectations, and safety? What forces drove that shift?
Well, I think there is more than one reason, Michael, but maybe I can mention like these points that I think could briefly explain. So the medicines themselves became more sophisticated and more complex. So we moved from immediate release tablets to and maybe simple liquids to sustained release formulations, um, enteric coating, maybe more nanoparticle systems, and this kind of made this made the finished dosage forms depend more on the excipients, how they behaved, and not only how what they are chemically. So basically, one of the reasons I would say that yeah, the medicines became more sophisticated. So it was not enough to have the same pharmacopoeial identity. It sometimes so that the performance would be the same. There were other things that were needed. Another important thing I would say that we, between brackets, discovered that the excipients were not really inactive. So a lot of excipients, we know that they can affect absorption. Um, they can even influence stability, yeah, and this could influence the clinical outcomes. So this made the industry concentrate more, or let us say, create a need for a tighter control on the physical properties of excipients. And then the regulation became much more strict. So there was a stricter regulation, and this has to do mainly with some incidents, probably unpleasant incidents that were happened due to excipients. For example, one incident happened, I think it was United States in 1937. There was an elixir. And so the excipient used was diethylene glycol, and it caused a lot of death, people who had taken this elixir. So from that time on, there was more control on the more control on the manufacturers to assess the toxicological effects. Traceability became something more important. Risk management. And of course, as a result of that, let's say the patient security or the patient safety became in a stronger focus. We also know today that some excipients cause allergies. Some even could cause toxicity in vulnerable populations. For pediatrics, so there is a database for that, which excipients are recommended, and even some interact with APIs. Finally, maybe I can say that the globalization of the supply chain of excipients, we today we can have excipients, of course, from India, China, or much broader, and monitoring logistics has become a very important issue. And although, for example, GDP is not let's say mandatory, but yeah, a lot of companies are asking for it.
Right.
So yeah, basically these are some of the reasons I think that yeah made
So
this. Yeah.
everything stricter, but for
Yes.
very
Yes.
good
Yes. Yes.
reasons, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And now in 2026, what do regulators expect around supply chain transparency and traceability?
Mhm. I think full traceability, that's what the manufacturers are expected to do and to control. So who made the excipient, the intermediates, who handled it, how was it transported, which batches went into which product. So let's say that the regulators are expecting complete visibility. That is very important. Also, I should say something very important is that stronger documentation. So much more documents are needed for the manufacturers, from the excipient manufacturer and the qualification of all the excipient suppliers. Today we have organs like IPEC. We have certification systems like Exipact. We have third-party audits. So all of this is, let's say, needed more by the manufacturers, finished dosage form manufacturers. Another important thing, I think, is the notification of change or control of change. So any change that the manufacturer does, the finished dosage form manufacturers need to know anything, because we know that any change in the equipment or the packaging material or the raw material source or even the process, the manufacturing side changes could influence the quality of the excipients.
Yes.
And finally, just one more point, Michael. Maybe today we can say that compendial compliance is no longer sufficient assurance of safety. In the past, it was enough to say EPU, SP, JP, but I think today the people are expecting much more than that.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that very comprehensive explanation. And you mentioned isomalt already, and in other discussions we've had, you've mentioned that it can be a strong sustainability candidate. So how could that claim be evaluated across the whole life cycle?
Well, I think it has positive points. Like when you look at it's biodegradable, reducing long-term environmental persistence. We know it is from a renewable origin. It's derived from agricultural crops. We know it has a low toxicity profile. It is a stable an excipient, and in this case, I can say that because the shelf life is a bit longer, let's say it reduces the waste. Yeah, this is just
Right.
a way of looking at it. But not only that, it is suitable for direct compression. It is multifunctional, so it reduces the number of excipients required in a formulation, maybe.
Yes.
And it has good patient's acceptability, and of course, it is water soluble. So yeah, it does have some advantages, I think. Yeah, that
Yeah.
puts it like in one of the most sustainable excipients.
Okay. Thank you for that. And moving on now to finished dosage form manufacturers, where you basically started your career, they often need predictable documentation packages. So what are the top requests that you see these days repeatedly?
Of course, the most important things, apart from the certificate of analysis and the safety data sheet, I would say GMP or quality statements from the companies, TSE, BSE statements, residual solvents, elemental impurities, GMO allergen statements, change notification commitments. These are, like, I would say, the kind of the obligatory or the most important. But then we see a lot now trends on nitrosamines, nitrite, nitrate, and even the people are asking for analytical data, not just the IPEC questionnaire, but really real data analysis. And yeah, there's a story. It's still not solved yet. So there's a story around or talking about. It's a hot topic, let's say. Supply chain transparency, this we mentioned. And then, for example, some new things, not so new maybe, but this ESG sustainability questionnaire, E for environment, S for social, and G for governance. And here, for example, when we talk of environment, we are talking of waste management, water consumption, energy consumption, renewable energy, social, like the employees' health and safety, diversity, human rights, governance like ethics and anti-corruption. But then there are like cybersecurity is needed, the DEG, EG statements, so diethylene glycol, ethylene glycol statements that, there's no contamination, and maybe the PFAS, which is this polyfluoroalkyl substances that are mainly, we can find them in food contact materials and packages.
Right.
So I would say these are the most things that, are, but of course, much more like allergens and
Yes. Yeah.
other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we can see that it's a process it's growing all the time, and the excipient suppliers have to keep up to step with these requirements, and we can do this, of course, with the help of IPEC. Um, so now moving to another subject which is quite hot at the moment, particularly in the nutraceutical area, and that is titanium dioxide free coating. Um, I know that Harke has been involved in this. And what is the technical challenge when you try to replace titanium dioxide regarding opacity and whiteness, let's say?
Mhm. Well, yeah, we know that it is banned in food. In pharma, for the moment, it is not banned. Um, we know that it is present in tens of thousands of medicines across Europe. Titanium dioxide is the best opacifier. The biggest issue I would say is that it has the highest refractive index. So titanium dioxide has a refractive index of 2.7. And for example, another opacifying agent that we are using, or most of the companies are using, is calcium carbonate, but it comes down to 1.6. So this is a big gap. This means that we would need much more calcium carbonate than titanium dioxide. What is recommended, however, is that the particle size of calcium carbonate is kind of like nearest to the particle size of the wavelength of visible light, which is about 0.2 microns.
Hmm.
So if one can find calcium carbonate that is around that particle size, 0.2, for example, which is really fine, that would give a best chances to have
Right.
a whiter color. Of course, I should mention here that, as you mentioned, Harke, we did some trials using hypromellose, calcium carbonate, and isomalt, and we find that isomalt really it gave good results because it made the smoother. It made the it made the
The
it gave
surface.
the surface
Yeah.
smoother and more whiter. So we do recommend to add isomalt to this formula with calcium carbonate and HPMC hypromellose. And I
Okay.
think my colleague Daria Kobiakova, she mentioned a little bit about this study in one of your podcasts.
She did. Well,
Yes,
she did mention it indeed, and I know there's a poster as well, which is
true.
great. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, we could talk about many things, but that's all the time we have at the moment. But Samir, thank you very much for sharing your experience and your insights into uh, this time in the pharmaceutical and nutraceutical area. And do you have like one last thing to say about, where it's going?
I mean, 2 weeks ago, yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I was in Barcelona, and I think we saw each
You
other.
did?
We talked, yes, and yeah, I see that Nutra is growing, amazing. Every year, it's becoming bigger and bigger. So yeah, I mean, isomalt can be used in Nutra, so I think this is very good, and I think more and more excipients that are used in pharmaceuticals are, yeah, let's say if they could be used in Nutra, or we are trying to use them in Nutra, that is a good way of going ahead, because definitely nutraceutical is growing, the nutraceutical market, and yeah, that's what I'm seeing for the moment.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much for that. So, thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching our podcast, listening to our podcast. And I will see you again on the next episode of Excipient Talk, brought to you by galenIQ.